All right, today we're starting on page 27 in the book, section 1-4, solving absolute value equations. Absolute value being the way that we measure distance from zero. Now, in true terms of measurement, all right, we're not going to have a number end up being negative when we take the absolute value of it. All right, so think about, if I go east 10 miles out here on Highway 380, well, if I go west 10 miles, which is the opposite direction, I don't say that one of those is 10 miles and one is negative 10 miles. So absolute value helps us measure how far away from zero a number is. The number might be negative, but its distance is not. So that's kind of what's being explained right here in the middle of page 27. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and jump in and start solving. So we're going to evaluate, or we're going to find the value right here in example 1. For PEMDAS, absolute value is treated like parentheses. It's not parentheses, but that's where it falls in PEMDAS. I've got 8.4 minus the absolute value of 2n plus 5. All right? And we are going to plug in, and they tell us that n equals negative 7.5. So remember, we're plugging in negatives. We're going to put those in parentheses, and let's see how this is set up. I've got 8.4 minus the absolute value of 2 times n. Again, we're substituting in negative 7.5 for n. We're just switching those out. And I've got plus 5, and I close the absolute value. We're finding the value of this problem, so we're going to get a number answer. All right. And PEMDAS says, hey, go inside. Remember, we treat absolute value like parentheses. Once in there, PEMDAS starts over. Well, when I look in those parentheses, nothing's happening, and it's just negative 7.5. So the next thing happening in there is multiplication. I'm distributing that 2 times negative 7.5. You're going to put the equal signs out front. You can. That's up to you. I've got 8.4 minus the absolute value of 2 times negative 7.5 is negative 15. Sorry, there we go. And then plus 5. We're still in the absolute value, so that's like parentheses, so I'm in there still doing the math. Now I've got to do negative 15 plus 5, so my next step is 8.4 minus. I've still got my absolute value there. We haven't taken it yet, so I can't drop it, but I do this math. Negative 15 plus 5 is negative 10. All right, so now I do the absolute value. That's what parentheses would tell me to do if I was doing order of operations. So we're still right here. There's still stuff going on with our original parentheses. The absolute value of negative 10 means, hey, how far away from 0 is negative 10? All right, well, it's 10 units away from 0. So I'm going to sub that value, and I'm going to go 8.4 minus. Now it's 10. This minus sign came because I had subtraction in the problem. Notice, when I took the absolute value of negative 10, I got 10. If you're not good at that, we'll continue to not be good at it. Let the calculator do it. Hit math, arrow over to numeric or NUM, pick the first thing. That's absolute value. Put negative 10 in there, hit enter, and it will tell you that negative 10 is 10 units away. There can be a lot of minus signs and stuff, so be careful in this problem. The only thing left to do here, all right, is to go ahead and subtract these. 8.4 minus 10 leaves us negative 1.6. There is the absolute value evaluation. So we had an expression with an absolute value. We plugged in negative 7.5 for n, and we went, and we ended up getting the value. You can check down here. They start throwing some fractions in. This would be some good ones. If you need some extra ones for your notes that you want me to check, why don't you try those on your own and bring that up to my desk. All right, we're going to kind of fast forward. We're going to go on to page 29. I'm going to skip over what's going on in page 28. Know that you are responsible for the highlighted terms, so if you have questions there, pay attention to that. All right, let's go to this example 3 right here at the top of page 29. So this time now we're going to go solve for this absolute value equation. All right, I've got this absolute value of 3x minus 2 plus 8 equals 1. We are not plugging in. We're not finding the value because we don't have the value of x to plug in. So now I'm solving. Right here it tells me I'm solving for x. All right, so when we do this, remember, I'm going to do PEMDAS backwards when the problem is put together. So we put it together with PEMDAS. We undo it by doing PEMDAS backwards. We treat absolute value like parentheses, so the first thing I need to do is move positive 8. I'm doing that in reference to the fact that we're solving for this x right here. All right, so to move positive 8, I subtract 8 from both sides of the equal sign. I get absolute value of 3x minus 2 equals 1 minus 8 is negative 7. Now, at this step, all right, I cannot take the absolute value of anything. I can't plug in anything for x where I take the absolute value and get a negative number. So the answer here is no solution, but I'm going to show you how we're going to set this up, and then we're going to do a couple of other ones to be able to get this done. What I would do here is I'm going to have two equations because there are two answers that represent absolute value, meaning I may have a positive and a negative, and when I take the absolute value, I get the same thing. If I was going to continue on, I would write this as 3x minus 2 equals negative 7, and 3x minus 2 equals positive 7. That's going to be our trick, is that we're going to just switch the sign of our answer. But again, in this problem, it doesn't work. I know right now, if I take the absolute value of all this, I will never get a negative answer, so our answer is no solution. So this stuff is irrelevant right here. All right? I'm going to jump back to example 2a and show you how it works when it doesn't give us a no solution answer. So this is actually back on page 28. I'm not going to put it up there. I'm just going to write it out. I've got this. 9 equals the absolute value of x plus 12. I'm going to show you how to work absolute value equations now. So basically, there are two answers I can get in here. When I take the absolute value of it, I'm going to get 9. So I've got to set that up and do it. Here's how it goes. I'm going to have 9 equals x plus 12. So basically, one time I'm just writing this as is, but I'm dropping the absolute value bars. Then I'm going to put negative 9 equals x plus 12. This is a tough concept, but if the stuff in here equals negative 9, when I take the absolute value of that, or the absolute value of negative 9, I'm going to get 9. I'm looking for two answers here. Now, very simply, the math here isn't hard. The x's are on the right. That's not a big deal. We got to be able to work with that. So I need to get rid of this positive 12, so I'm minus 12 on both sides, and I get x equals negative 3. I'm going to do the same thing over here, minus 12 minus 12. I get x equals negative 21. These are my two answers. If I plug in negative 3 for x right here, well, negative 3 plus 12 is 9. The absolute value of 9 is 9, so this one works. If I plug in negative 21 for x, negative 21 plus 12 is negative 9, and the absolute value of negative 9 is 9. So you can see right here that we have two solutions in an absolute value equation. So I jumped ahead and showed you a no solution one, and now I'm showing you how to do it. Now we're going to go look at a one solution example. This is example 4, and you're like, well, you just said we're going to get two solutions. Yeah, well, actually, we might get no solution. We might get two solutions. I'm going to show you one where we get one solution. So I've got this, absolute value of x plus 10 equals 4x minus 8. All right, in this instance, you're like, well, I got x's on both sides. Trust the process. Here's how we're going to set it up. One of them's going to be x plus 10 equals 4x minus 8. On the other one, I'm going to switch the signs of whatever my answer was. So the x plus 10, the absolute value part stays the same, but I flip these signs. So it's going to be negative 4x plus 8. I'm literally taking the opposite of that whole side. All right, now we just need to get x by itself. All right, I like getting x's to the left, so I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. Since I'm moving x's to the left, that means I need to take my numbers to the right. So I need to move positive 10. I do that by subtracting 10. My numbers cancel on the left. My x's cancel on the right. So now we only have variables on left and constants on right. We're good. So x minus 4x is negative 3x. And that's going to equal negative 18. I'm going to divide now by negative 3. Pretty simple. And I get that x equals 6. All right, there's one answer that we think might be right. But we're going to have to check it in a second. If you'll notice in the instructions right here, it says check. All right? So we got to pay attention. All right, over here, let's do the same thing. I'm going to add 4x to both sides. I like moving x's left. I'm going to move numbers over, so I'm going to minus 10. If you're not good at handling that in one step, move your x's first, write it out, then move your numbers. All right, so my constant on the left cancels out. My x's on the right cancel out. That's what we want. Now do the math. X plus 4x is 5x. Positive 8 and negative 10 makes negative 2. When I divide by 5, I get that x equals negative 2/5. They're like, oh, we get two answers. That's great. But now we got to check them. They told us in the instructions, check your solution. So I'm going to flip over and we're going to check. Now remember what our two answers were. We got x equals 6 and we got x equals negative 2/5. So now I'm going to plug those back into the original and see if it works. You can see this work happening right here in your book on page 29. So here we go. Again, the problem is absolute value of x plus 10 equals 4x minus 8. Now we're going to sub in. I've got to check each one separately. So I'm going to check 6 first. I'm plugging in 6 in both spots where I see x. So I got the absolute value of 6 plus 10 equals 4 times 6 minus 8. I don't know if those are equal to each other. We're setting it up to see if this works. So I've still got math to do here. 6 plus 10 is 16, so this side is absolute value of 16. I've got work to do on this side. 4 times 6 is 24. So I've still got math working on both sides. Let's keep going. Absolute value of 16 is 16. What's 24 minus 8? 16. So again, I'm putting a little question mark there. At this step, I've got to ask myself, does 16 equal 16? Yes, it does. I know that 6 is an answer. We have to do the same thing with negative 2/5. You're like, well, I'm not good with fractions. Well, then do it in the calculator. That's something that can be done easily. So let's come down here. I'm now plugging in negative 2/5 everywhere I see an x. So that's absolute value of negative 2/5 plus 10 equals 4 times negative 2/5 minus 8. Now notice, I didn't put 6 in for one x and negative 2/5 in for the other. I'm doing them separately. I plugged in 6 for both x's one time. Now I'm plugging in negative 2/5 for x both times. Now, if you're not good at this, this is something that would be great in the calculator. Okay, something that would be great in the calculator. I can go absolute value of, so remember math over to numeric, pick that. In parentheses, negative 2 divided by 5, right? See what we got, and then plus 10. So check back in, it looks like that. If you need to arrow over to the right so it looks right, so you're good, hit that. We get 9.6. So this side, we let the calculator do the math, we get 9.6. We can do the same thing on this side. So we're going to go 4 times. Remember, I don't have to put the time sign in. If it's touched a parenthesis, it is times. We need that parenthesis for the fraction anyways. So 4 times negative 2/5 minus 8. Look what I get. Negative 9.6. So remember, we're seeing if these are equal. And you look at that, and the question is, are they equal? I get that both those numbers are the same, but one's positive and one's negative. Is that the same thing? No, it's not. That's not one of our answers. So negative 2/5 doesn't check. The only answer for this is x equals 6. And you're like, well, coach, it's multiple choice. I'll be able to pick that. Well, if one answer is just 6 and one answer says the answer should be 6 and negative 2/5, you're going to have to check those. All right? So that's how we work. That's a good intro to absolute value. One thing I didn't show you looking down here in the guided practice at the bottom of 4, if you have a number in front of your absolute value, you will have to divide that out. That's something I can help you with as you get to working on 1-4. Obviously, I'll be fielding questions. Thank you for your attention today. Stay on top of your notes. Make sure that you're writing all these down and getting them in. Thank you.